From HeatherHansenPresents.com, this is The Elegant Warrior, a podcast spotlighting all of the people who strive for elegance in times of trial. We're talking about their definition of elegance, how they maintain it, and what tools they use to help. My guest today is an elegant warrior for sure. She is a former soldier of the Israel Defense Forces, so she's quite literally a warrior. But she's also been a suicide counselor for years, working on the front lines of a different kind of battle. She's fluent in 5 languages, spent 15 years as a global marketing leader, and now has an award-winning coaching business with enthusiasm. There, she works with her clients to live with enthusiasm, love with enthusiasm, and work with enthusiasm. She has been on Bravo, and she has a book coming out in the spring, which we're going to talk about a little bit today. Now, on the Elegant Warrior podcast, it's Keren Eldad. Keren, welcome.
Thank you, Heather. It's such a pleasure to be here.
It's so nice to have you here as we start this podcast. And I immediately thought of you because I know that you are one of these women who maintains a sense of elegance throughout the different parts of your life. Tell us a little bit before we get into elegance about your history and what sort of brought you to where you are today.
Well, first of all, thank you very much. I'm very, very flattered to be associated with one of my favorite words. I absolutely love the word elegance. The word warrior, when it's connotated the right way, is of course an amazing word as well, because it's really about the formidable surmounting of challenges in life which make us elegant.
That's absolutely the point.
And I think it's particularly funny because I spend about 90% of my life in a bathrobe, and elegance as a compliment is a huge, huge deal. You know, I wasn't born elegant. Nobody was, really. I was born to a happy middle-class family from Israel, people who really believe that eating at the food court is very chic. And when I was, I think, in 6th grade, I started to live my life a little bit differently. I had no idea I was forming a persona at the time, but I liken it a little bit to Frasier Crane, the very, very popular sitcom character from the 90s and the aughts. And it was, I think, around 6th grade where I started drinking grape juice with my meals and asking for things in crystalware. And these were little quirks, not of a tiny little elitist, but really of a person who wanted to live life a little bit more deliberately. And today, it's part of what I really practice and has changed my life, saved my life several times, and really maintained a constant undertone of elegance through trials and tribulations, and also in really, really happy moments too.
Tell me about how it saved your life a couple times.
Well, in 2012, of course, we all have seismic shifts in our life constantly, by the way, but for me, there was a particular period that was really, really big and changed everything. 2012, I went through a divorce. And right after the divorce, the very few possessions that I got to keep after the divorce, I put in storage. And then that storage burned down. And then after that, I started my first agency, and that agency unfortunately didn't last because my business partner wanted to go back in-house, which happens to many, many entrepreneurs. And in the same month, unfortunately, in a terrible cosmic coincidence, both of my cats who I had for 16 years died. Now, when you really aggregate very, very big life events like this in extreme close proximity, you've got what we can call a cluster munch. And in those situations, it's very, very easy to spiral downwards. It's very easy, in essence, for one anxious thought to be followed by another anxious thought, or something that is typical of all humans, not just women, contrary to popular opinion, where we really compound all of the issues in our lives into one mega issue. Because of my healthy practices, because I'm rather organized, because I plan out my days usually a day in advance, because I stay in what I like to call the spiritual gym, meaning I meditate every single day, I do continue to exercise, I eat properly, I sleep properly, no matter what, I probably, because of that, overcame it, and really, really quickly, relatively speaking. Today I know that I was actually doing something very productive. Back then, it was just habit.
What started those habits? What began you on the road to sleeping and meditating and being so conscious of going to the spiritual gym?
Not doing it for many years got me into the habit of understanding why it needs to be done. I'm like everybody else, you know. If I'm left to my own devices, you know, it's funny, my clients don't believe me when I say this, but when I'm left to my own devices, I will watch The Crown for 8 hours straight. and not leave the room. And I absolutely love a good Sunday with nothing on the calendar. Unfortunately, this is antithetical to what really makes us happy. What makes us happy is progress, it's momentum. It's one of the key ingredients to happiness. Cognitive behavioral theory backs this up with a lot of scientific evidence. The truth is, I promise you, if today you don't see yourself at least nominally better off than you were 1 year ago when we met, you are not going to be living to your full potential, fully charged, with enthusiasm, happy. So when I understood that, I understood that really this is about putting together a series of habits and consistently following them in order to get out ahead of uncertainty and doubt, because those are constants in life.
And you have done that. I mean, if I did some rabbit hole diving in preparation for our meeting, and you've had a lot of different lives. Mm-hmm. You've worked in marketing. You've worked for the Israeli Defense Forces. What brought you to the place where you are now coaching and really focused on changing people's lives for the better in that way?
You know, it's funny. I think that everything really follows a straight trajectory. Being a soldier in the Israeli army, first of all, you have no choice when you are an Israeli, and it is a privilege to serve. It was definitely one of the formations of my career. I became a marketer because I thought it was really cool. I loved fashion when I was younger, and I thought it was really, really sexy to do something that was a little The Devil Wears Prada-ish. Ended up in the publishing industry, and from there at big luxury companies. I never once actually thought that what I was doing was really close to purpose or to meaning. But it turns out, Heather, that it was all along, because I have always loved writing. I have always loved contributing. I have always loved uplifting and using my voice for anything that would really stimulate thought in other human beings. And so when everything started to collapse, the systems, by the way, always have to collapse when you are getting ready for an epiphany moment. So for anyone out there listening who's going through some tough times, I promise you, favor is coming. That's always a good sign, not a bad sign. And when the whole thing started to collapse in a big heap, I started asking big questions. Well, why do I do this? What do I like? What is the common thread amongst all of those things that I like to do and that I've done so far? What would I like to continue? What do I not want to continue or ever do again? And, you know, from there I started to explore this the traditional way. I hired one coach, and then another coach, and then another coach. And they kept getting more expensive, by the way.
As they do.
As they do. And interestingly enough, we ended up with this. I ended up really remembering, there was a visceral moment where I was sitting down watching one of my coaches speak thinking, I could do that. Wait a second. I want to do that. And that is the beginning of everything.
Absolutely. And I know that you have, there are some coaches, wonderful coaches, who don't have the training you have. You have really doubled down on the training. Why did you choose to take that route, and what do you feel like it contributed to your practice?
I continue to double down on training. I feel extremely serious about it. Without saying anything disparaging, I want to say this. The coaching industry is still sort of a Wild West. There are 20,000 practicing coaches in the United States, at least the last statistics that I looked up. Very, very few, a very low percentage is ICF credentialed or credentialed by the International Coaching Federation, which is today the highest standard of coaching that is available to us. Very few are neuroscience trained cognitive behavioral therapists. And I take this very seriously because I am a crisis counselor. Crisis counselors don't just get to jump on the line and say, oh, I hear you want to kill yourself. Do you want to talk about that? You never jump right into it. You are thoroughly trained. I work with volunteer with Crisis Text Line, which is one of the biggest organizations in the country, and they put us through fantastic, amazing, inspiring, hard 10 weeks of training before we even take one call. And it's the same thing when you're in coaching. When you're in coaching, we're not here to just talk about how your day went. Your entire life is being examined, and we're trying to get you to bigger results that you've ever had before. And I think this should be taken extremely seriously. There's another thing I want to say here, and that is, Heather, I specialize in people like you and me. We're superstars. And superstars are very unlikely to not meet this industry with a healthy dose of skepticism, as in, that's not scientific. Now listen, you're legally trained. With due respect, we're talking about intersubjective realities no matter what we're dealing with in the social sciences. However, it is very, very worth noting that before we talk about that which sometimes has been questioned, like spiritual practices, or even law of attraction. We really do need to back it up with scientific evidence in order for me to come across to my corporate audiences in the most valid and legitimate way.
What do you think is the biggest benefit from having worked in the crisis counseling? I know that that's something you take very seriously, and I've seen a lot of your Instagram posts about the work that you do in the suicide hotlines. What do you think that you bring from that in your own life and to your, you call them superstar clients? I'm sure that there's a lot, but if you can just sort of distill that for us.
I think two things. The first thing that crisis counseling, and I'm a little groggy today because I was awake all night doing this. The first thing is it gives you perspective. So to see all walks of life and the kind of crises that people do have. Most of our texters, by the way, 75% are under the age of 25, and that falls in the category of teen anxiety. And in some cases, of course, they think that it's real and it's very, very serious, and we deal with it very seriously. But it's quite different when you get to speak to somebody who's been addicted to drugs for a very long time, who's facing very severe financial strife, who has recently lost a child or suffering through a very serious bout of postpartum, and so on and so forth. So it's very humbling to see the very wide gamut of human suffering and to really have an opportunity to participate in their healing and to help them. The second thing that it gives you, aside from perspective, oh my God, my life is so fantastic, and I can talk to superstars about how very grateful they should be, and hopefully are, is it actually gives you exceptional training. Because, here's the biggest thing that I learned in crisis counseling. I think this is very, very helpful to absolutely anyone. We had a quick discussion before speaking here about emotional mastery and how absolutely essential it is for your life. Emotional mastery is about temperament. It's about temper. And the thing is, when you're doing this for a living or anything like this for a living, anywhere where you need to help people to reach their best judgment using their best facilities, you cannot go down to the problem, meaning you can't be influenced by the moment. You have to stay at the edge of the problem where you still have control, where you still have the ability to influence. The second you get very angry, the second you feel pity, which is a horrible emotion to feel if you're trying to help somebody. The second you agree with them that the problem is absolutely enormous, which is very different from validating the problem and qualifying it as real and understanding what they're going through, you really have lost the battle. So I think what crisis counseling above all taught me is to stay calm and to stay separate.
Staying separate, I think that I meditate as well. And I think that meditation, at least by reputation, helps you to do that, to sort of remove yourself from those emotions. Do you think that your meditation practice has been helpful in that?
To say that meditation has been helpful is an understatement. Meditation is pretty much everything. Anybody who's ever meditated is really aware of this. In fact, I was just listening, one of my favorite podcasts is Waking Up with Sam Harris. And he was speaking to one of my favorite authors, Yuval Noah Harari, the other Israeli brilliant person.
Yeah, and for those, he's written, 3 books, and the third book is out right now, and you just posted it the other day.
Yeah, it's called 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. His first book, Sapiens, is a huge international bestseller. I think it's been translated to 50 or 60 languages. And then Homo Deus came out, which was afterwards. That's a history of mankind and then a view of the future, and now he's just discussing what we can do about everything right now. Either way, both guys were talking to each other about meditation and about the fact that they couldn't do what they do without meditation. I think the whole point is exactly what you said. Meditation teaches you that you are not the thought. The thought is not thinking you. You are thinking the thought. And if you can learn how to become the observer of your thoughts, you don't get sucked into the thoughts anymore. You can actually start to move more freely in this life.
One of the things that you said sort of in passing that I think is important, and it goes back to the elegance idea, I think, is you said our texters, not our callers, when you were talking about the suicide hotline. Are the majority of the people now texting in as opposed to calling in?
For crisis text line, They are all texters.
And I saw something with Nancy, and I'm going to forget her last
Lublin.
name. Yes, exactly. That they found, she actually is the one that sort of started the idea, and she's the woman who started Dress for Success.
Yeah.
And
she's amazing.
She's amazing.
She's a real hero.
I would love to have her as a guest, but she's the one who started the whole thing. And it said that, with the kids using text message, why not have it be something that they can do with respect to when they're in crisis?
Yeah.
Do you feel as though having the ability to start that by text message gets more people to reach out?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the medium is the message in this case. I believe most people are more comfortable with text anyway, but also the anonymity that writing and the amount of time that you're allowed for reflection when writing has been extremely beneficial. It really lets you solve things and solve them very thoroughly.
It's interesting because a lot of times people talk about technology as if it's not elegant, and yet in a situation like that, it probably is the most elegant way to communicate those types of feelings that are otherwise very difficult to put into words.
This is very true. And it really depends on who you are. For coaching, texting would be extremely difficult because we look at body language, because we want to hear the voice, and because we really want to build rapport with you. We want to see you. But in texting, you absolutely can do this as well. And our goal is to get you from a red hot moment to a moment in which you are soothed, you are calm enough and brave enough to go on with your day. In that sense, I think that Nancy and her unbelievable team are really onto something. I know that Crisis Text Line is about to launch in 15 other countries, and it's truly been a gift for my life.
It's amazing. And now I want to go into your coaching work because I think that, first of all, I too, we have an affinity for words that begin with E because I love the word enthusiasm. And I wanted to tell you, Keren, because we met a year ago and we became fast friends. But in thinking about this interview, I was thinking about one of Marianne Williamson's books, The Law of Divine Compensation. And in that book, she's talking about faith and says, if you don't have enough faith, you can lean on mine. And I can tell you from the time that I've spent with you that whenever I don't feel like I have enough enthusiasm, I feel like I can lean on yours.
Oh,
I have to
thank you.
imagine that your coaching clients feel that way as well. Where did you get all of your enthusiasm?
Well, first of all, thank you very much. That's a beautiful thing to say to somebody, and it's really, really deeply appreciated. I also think that influence is all about what you're talking about. Have you ever walked into a boardroom in a really nasty mood?
Yeah, of course.
Have you watched how everybody gets into a really bad mood immediately afterwards?
Absolutely.
Of course, and it's exactly the same thing with good energy. If you take the time to be in the spiritual gym to cultivate your own positive energy. I wake up, by the way, I do absolutely nothing for an hour. I never check my emails or my social media, despite how much I love cat videos on Instagram. For at least an hour in the morning, I drink my coffee, I enjoy my day, I play really happy music. I'm currently obsessed with ABBA. I know, 40 years too late. And it really gets me in a very good mood. And so when you walk into a room with somebody else, you are that light that they are seeking, because you cannot ever be so dark that you will uplift a person by joining them in their misery. You gotta stay high and you have to stay positive. And enthusiasm, contrary to popular opinion, once again, is not something you're born with. Though Yuval Noah Harari makes a beautiful case, and so many others do as well, for the sunny disposition, as in some of us are just naturally born this way, sure, that is possible. And it is absolutely the truth that people are diagnosed with GAD and with depression and do suffer from chemical imbalances that affect their moods very, very much. But all of this is always subject to improvement. And when you start to learn how to practice that, that's what I teach you, you can absolutely get to my levels of awesome energy all the time.
Now, your first program was Live with Enthusiasm?
Yes.
And that is generally a life approach. Tell us a little bit about that, as opposed to, I think that Work with Enthusiasm followed and then Love with Enthusiasm.
Yes, that's
so tell
true.
us about the three and how they work together.
So today we have 4 programs: Live with Enthusiasm, Date with Enthusiasm, Lead with Enthusiasm, because work changed to really a focus on leadership and entrepreneurship, and Enterprise with Enthusiasm, which is a very advanced program. The reason I focused first and foremost on Live with Enthusiasm, and still no one can take Lead or Enterprise without taking Live, is because we have to fundamentally shift the way you look at things so that the things you look at change.
Yes.
Dr. Wayne Dyer.
That's right.
If we do not challenge the flawed premises upon which almost everyone has built their worldview, you're not going to let any light in. There's not really going to be a change in the system. So what Live with Enthusiasm is designed to do is to jolt that system, no matter which arena you are looking to transform in. In any case, it is a life coaching program that really does focus on pretty much anything that you'd like to change, or with which the results in your life have been, let's say, mediocre or not impressing you enough. Then we can graduate Lead with Enthusiasm was the natural follower, and that's really when I started to adapt this program for big companies, big corporations. And I started it as Work with Enthusiasm and as corner office coaching programs for the companies I used to serve as a marketer. So I really started with the Richemont babies, the ones I still love the most because I used to work for the company, like IWC and Van Cleef & Arpels. And today they're serving many other luxury companies and also billion-dollar companies and regular amazing companies that just want to nurture and really nourish their employees and raise their engagement game.
And are you seeing, I just listened to a podcast and I can't remember, but I'll put it in the show notes for everybody, about how more and more companies are seeing that they need to do learning for their employees throughout the course of their stay at the corporation. So learning, not just the things that we're talking about, but also technological learning, learning about coding, but also learning about the soft skills, things that you didn't necessarily learn in school. So are you seeing an increase in your corporate clients because of this focus on learning?
I think so, but I also think that there's a root for this focus on learning, and it's the mindset of servant leadership, which also is triggered by something else. I don't know if you knew this, but today about 40% of the U.S. workforce is already reporting side hustle on their taxes. We are in an independent economy, and that means that the millennial and the woman in the workplace are demanding flexibility from a position of bargaining power. And when you have that in a corporation, and we know, of course, what the statistics are of whether or not they will succeed, it doesn't really matter. They do have other options. So when you, the corporation, become a little bit more of a parent, nurturing them, developing their skills, giving them motivational, amazing tools that will change their lives, they are far more likely not only to stay, but also to appreciate you. And what we come in for primarily is engagement and talent retention, but also the development of those soft skills that make you a better, happier, excited leader.
And what brought you to, I mean, I know this from knowing you, and your enthusiasm for romantic relationships is something that I've always enjoyed watching. And I've enjoyed watching you find that in your own life has been fabulous. But what brought you to the I guess dating now, is the dating with enthusiasm? Was that one of your underlying secret heart wishes to do, or was it something that was always in the plan?
Yeah. Look, I love love. I'm Keren and I'm a loveaholic. I love love. And so I was always primed for love. But again, the statistics brought me here. And here they are. 55% of the United States population is single, according to the latest Census Bureau. Well, that's 123 million people. And here's another thing that I can tell you just from experience on Crisis Text Line and on experience in the coaching industry. I've now coached hundreds of individuals privately. That is the number one reason for your unsettlement. Isolation, loneliness, relationships are the main factors in human distress. If intimacy ain't working, ain't nothing working. So Date with Enthusiasm is actually created not just for those seeking a soulmate, but for those who are in a relationship and really want it to be the best relationship it could possibly be. The relationship that they somehow always suspected was available to them, but perhaps settled for something different. We're living in a world in which 50 million people are on Tinder, and that is just one of several apps. And so many people complain incessantly about how horrible it is, where I say the exact opposite. You see, when I got divorced from that lovely man I once married, shout out to Cedric, when I got divorced, I re-entered the dating market in a completely different universe. Not only was I moving back to New York and kale had taken over, suddenly it was a thing that we ate, but also all of my friends were not only on dating apps, but proud of it, were okay with talking about it.
Very different.
So I start dating on these apps thinking, oh my God, this is a miracle. This is the most incredible thing that's ever happened.
Shopping.
And I never lost that perspective. And I believe that it was that perspective that landed me right in the lap of Mr. Ryan on Tinder, and we're still together.
Yeah, together, and again, for you listeners, I encourage you to follow Coach Keren at her Instagram, and at the end of our talk, we're going to give you all of the ways you can reach her. But you will see the enthusiasm in the way she lives her life, in the way that she approaches cats and queens and Ryan, and all kinds of things. So I do want to talk about, I know that you provide in-person coaching, but a lot of the listeners are going to want to access your resources. And you do provide an online system as well. Tell us about that. And then a little earlier, you had said the thing about, eye contact and all of that. How do you make that work online? Because I know it's possible, but I know it's different.
100%. Well, first of all, the book, there's a reason for writing a book and for wanting it with all my heart to become a New York Times bestseller. And that is not because I've always secretly wanted to be famous. I'm in my 40s now. Famous is not really a thing.
Right.
The most important thing is for people to have access to this and have access to this at the lowest price point possible. So that's going to come soon. All 3 of my best-selling programs are now available as fully virtual programs, meaning you will get the same videos, the same audios, and the same worksheets as my superstar clients, all available to you in Date, Live, and Lead with Enthusiasm, and they're available on my website.
Which is fabulous. Do you find that the people who use it on the website have similar results to the people that use it when they get to meet with you in person?
Yes, absolutely, and I make sure of that. And the reason I make sure of that is because I always open consultations, as in I will still accept. I know that my personal coach has said to me this is unscalable, but it's important to me to do a consultation with you before and to check in with you afterwards and to be available to you through email. I don't know how much longer this will last because, when you sell thousands, it gets a little bit trickier. But for now, that's absolutely the way I'm running the show. And even with Vivir con Entusiasmo, my first Spanish-speaking program that launches next month, I want to continue to have this personal high touch. It's important for people to get the results that they really, really want out of this. And also, if they don't get the results, to show them where the blind spots may lie so that they know exactly where to tweak it and how to continue.
And I think sometimes just knowing that you're there gives people enough of a sense of confidence and sort of safety that they don't need it as much as they would if they just felt as though you had dropped this program on them and taken off.
No, 1,000,000%. And I'm responding again to statistics. The first one that really bugs me is something around like 80% of people who don't read past the first chapter of a book or who don't finish a program. Guys, I put my heart and soul in this. You are taking this freaking program. And the second is I care a lot about my rate of return, and that's because your success is my success. When you coach big companies, Dior doesn't rehire you because they thought you were cute. They rehire you because they saw a big shift in their team. And so it's exactly the same thing with you. I want you to be living your best life, and I have a personal stake in it.
And you just mentioned you have a Spanish-speaking program now. I know you speak 5 languages. Do you plan to continue to expand into different languages as well?
Sure, it's possible. Why not? I've gotten really nice text messages from Geneva and from Paris, so you never know. There could be a French version. There could be an Israeli version.
Listen,
Peace negotiations with enthusiasm.
Yeah. The sky's the limit for you, Keren. I know this to be true. Tell us, I want to bring it back now as we sort of wind down a little bit. I want to know your definition of enthusiasm. Elegance, because, as you know, I've written a book, The Elegant Warrior, and the word elegant, we sort of see it a certain way, but it comes from the Latin root to choose or elect. And I do think we all choose our own definitions of elegance. And so I'm definitely interested in what your definition is.
I'm familiar with 2 other definitions, sophistication and style being one of them, and the other one, ingenuity and innovation. And I think that I'm more partial to ingenuity and innovation and also to the simplicity of the ability to choose. It comes down to this. There's a Tom Ford quote I like a lot. I'm quoting a fashion designer.
I was just going to say,
talk about enlightenment. But the guy knows what he's talking about a lot of the time. And I think that when he said dressing well is a form of good manners, he kind of got to me because I was thinking about that a lot. It really has nothing to do with what you're wearing on your body. It has to do with the way that you present yourself to the day. And so I think about this all the time. Of course, we can do nothing without the right mindset. If you're just pushing yourself to dress well so that you can please others, you have not done anything that is really worthwhile or pleasing to you. It's not really about manners towards other people. It's about owning your character and your definition of yourself in order to conquer that day. And that's not a sense of pride. That's a sense of contribution. That's a sense of growth. That's a sense of going for everything that you can go for. And so when I talk about elegance, I think about something that is calculated, that is deliberate, and is about owning your day before it even started. I knew what I was wearing today, And we're in a podcast where nobody can see us.
Well, we may have some live stream eventually.
Well, that's really exciting. And I'm obviously going to post this on @Coach Keren. But think about this. It's really about how you feel, how comfortable you are, and how excited you are to charge your day a day in advance. I also know that I chunk out my time a certain way because all the superstars that I've reviewed and researched, mainly writers, for example, Stephen King or Mindy Kaling or Shonda Rhimes, they do plan out their days in advance, and as a result, they get magnificent, enormous bodies of work at the end of, say, a decade.
Yeah, I do think that, and that was my next follow-up question is, what do you do to maintain your elegance? And I think you've given us so many things that you do between meditation and blocking. What do you think are the top 3, Keren? Because I know you read, you exercise, you do SoulCycle, you do a lot. So what are the top 3 that are my audience, the elegant warriors out there, that they could take from this and say, I can do those things to maintain my own elegance, whatever that might mean to me?
I'm going to give you 3 things that are basically just overview genres. The first one is planning. Those who fail to plan to fail. Everything should begin with the end in mind. That's the Stephen R. Covey principle if you haven't read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The truth is, planning is the essence of owning it, whatever it is. And planning also comes down to decisiveness. It has to do with your standards in life, to know what you're going to do and to stick with it. So planning is incredibly important. My YouTube is filled with free videos about how to plan properly, how to write a to-do list properly, from the most general to the most organic. The second thing that I'd like to say is time management. Time management is a derivative of planning. It's not actually about planning. It's about understanding that you can live your life responding to other people's demands, answering people's emails, being rushed into meetings, being thrilled to pursue your child every time the baby says, "Mommy, mommy," or actually being actively aware of how you're spending your time in every given hour and being a little bit more mindful of that. And again, time management is a seminar that I teach to pretty much everyone because most people are not really starting it with owning their time and with respecting their boundaries. And the third thing that I say that I think really keeps me elegant, elevated, happy, and balanced is faith. And faith is not woo-woo. It is not about talking to you about God or even about Oprah, my absolute favorite. Faith is about surrender. It's about knowing that when you have sown those seeds, when you have done the best you can, you also need to relax about it, and you need to trust that it will be whatever it's supposed to be, and let it go.
Yeah, I love all 3 of those, and faith, of course, is such a big part for me as well. And as you said, to know that things will be okay, that everything will be okay. But the first 2 are really about intention, aren't they? Intending to plan your day and then being intention-filled with your time. And a big part of that, I think, is in you making that first hour of the day yours and not allowing other people to dictate that first hour. Do you feel like that sets the tone for the day?
Absolutely. And I want to fine-tune that by saying that it's not about I'm going to ignore my child when it's screaming at me and wants something. It's absolutely different from that. It's not conditioning other people that you will respond constantly to demands. You must take care of yourself first in order to serve other people. Your intention has to be from love, not from lack or from fear or to respond to demands. That is why those nice people on the planes keep telling us to put our oxygen masks on first before on children. It's not because they want all the kids to die.
Right.
It's because they want us to be useful and not out of oxygen. And it's the same thing with owning your day. Everything comes down to the intention. If you ask yourself, am I responding to this meeting because I really do want to go and be part of this, or because I really have to go and otherwise I'll be fired? I got to tell you, only one of these is productive. And when you start living your life that way, as if all of life were a meeting that did or did not require your presence, you start getting really vastly different results, and you're a lot more relaxed.
Keren, I know you read even more than I do, which is, my mother would say, quite a bit. Can you, and if you can't bring us down to 1, give us 2 or 3, but books that you find to be the most elegant?
Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. If you have not read it yet, it is absolutely breathtaking. It's a masterpiece. I don't agree with him on everything. It doesn't matter. He's humorous and he's clever, and he makes very, very good points. The second one, and if you're looking for a coaching book that encompasses it all, that tells everything neatly and cleanly and goes from point A to point B, in the tone of elegance. There are 2, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. 7, by the way, being a giant lie. There are about 700.
Right.
But it doesn't matter. It's still phenomenal. And The Astonishing Power of Emotions by the one, the only Abraham Hicks.
You have a book coming out in the spring. So tell the listeners where they can find you and where all of the various social media places that they can locate you.
Well, the book is called All Your Problems Solved Forever. It's a tongue-in-cheek nod to anxiety and to anything that causes you distress in life. But the truth is, this book is a coaching program. I have a signature method that is disguised as a book. It will take you through all 7 stages of my coaching system very succinctly, and then it will take you through the 10 most common coaching scenarios. All your money problems solved forever, all your career problems solved forever, all your political problems solved forever, and all of your relationships solved forever, and so on and so forth. It's going to be available through my website on allyourproblemsolvedforever.com and, of course, on Amazon and lots of other outlets. But for now, you can reach all of my coaching programs and a lot of case studies, testimonials, and videos on KerenEldad.com. And, of course, by following me on @CoachKeren on Instagram, on Facebook, Live With Enthusiasm, and on LinkedIn.
Keren, thank you so much for being with me here today. And I have a feeling we'll have you back if you'll come with some questions from the audience.
With enormous pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.